Hey, Fred Minnick here, and I'm about to do a tasting of some pretty rare whiskeys that are hard to come by. They're all released this year, and it's tough to get them. So I'll be tasting the 10-year-old Van Winkle, the 12-year-old Van Winkle, as well as the 15-year-old Pappy Van Winkle up against the 10-year-old Michters and 25-year-old Michters. Now, I bought the Van Winkles, and Michter's products were given to me by the distilleries. You can see more disclosures in my description section. So I am excited to taste these. These are very hard to come by. These are year in, year out. These are the ones that people really want to hunt. They really want to get. Full transparency, I was not able to acquire the 20-year-old or 23-year-old from 2020 on the Pappy Van Winkle line. They just simply did not have enough stock this year, and I couldn't get my hands on one. And no matter how many favors I tried to call in, nobody wanted to part with this year's Pappies. And if they did, they wanted way too much money for it. So I was not in the mood for spending, $2,500 on a bottle of 20 or 23-year-old, especially when they consistently do not do well for me. So if you want to give this tasting an asterisk, feel free to, and feel free to send me a sample of your 20 or 23-year-old. I'll accept it. So as you can see, this is completely blind, and outside of covering the glassware, I do not know what I have here. I wrapped each one of them with a little paper towel so that I can't be influenced by the color. Going in, of course, I'll see it in the glass, so that's probably a moot point. But the name of the product is actually on the little sample. And as I am tasting these in the edit, if you ever get a chance to do something like this, just so you know, it's a lot of fun, but these whiskeys can set you back quite a bit. And I recommend, supporting your local bar if they have the products. Of course, that's a little bit different now, but you can actually get samples of things like this at bars across the country. Like Jack Rose is able to sell samples, and they're in Washington, D.C. So if you're in the D.C. area, you can get samples from Jack Rose to do a tasting. Of course, it always helps if you're in a network of a group of bourbon nerds. If somebody gets a bottle, hopefully they're sharing with you. And that's basically how the whiskey world is supposed to work. Okay, here we go. I am going to just dive right into them. First of all, I'm in the middle of about to go through my awards, and one of these may jump in there for best bourbon. I don't know yet. I have tasted 3 of these, and they were excellent. So this taste off might lead to something going into the best of bourbon for me in 2020. So let's start with Glass A. Oh man, peaches. Apricot. Brown sugar. Wow. That's gorgeous. Glass A is just gorgeous. It's got this beautiful, powerful caramel. It's like a very concentrated caramel, kind of right there in the middle of the palate. Yeah, so it has a really beautiful apricot, brown sugar. It's just beautiful on the peaches. To me it's a cross between some kind of brown sugar dessert and a peach cobbler with a big old rush of caramel. So Glass A is definitely bringing it. It's definitely delicious and worthy of the hunt. Glass B. You know what? I'm going to rinse my mouth out here. Especially when you're tasting like older bourbons that have a great deal of character to them. You want to make sure that you are not you're not carrying over any whiskey notes from the last class. So really, really nice taste on A. Let's go to B. All right, Glass B is got some like molasses notes. Molasses, like some black pepper. Hint of banana. There's like a pie crust there. And a kind of like a hint of ginger. It doesn't feel how it's on the mouth, though. It's kind of like there and then it's gone. Whereas A, you know, sometimes when you do these tastings, it's inevitable that you're comparing the two glasses. That's the whole point of this. But Glass A is far more complex, far more, you know, velvety than Glass B. So Glass B, we'll come back to you just in case there's a little bit of palate shock from Glass A. Let's try Glass C. Woo, got a little bit of some funk in there, you know. Kind of some earthiness, some tobacco, cigar box. Real pleasant cigar box note there. So cigar box, tobacco. There's like some beautiful smoke. And a kind of like a pecan shell. And there's a brininess there, a brininess that's in the form of almost like an oyster shell, like the outside of the oyster shell when you have, you know, it's in that tray and it's got that salt there. It's like that kind of unique brininess where, to be honest with you, just is delicious. So I like C a lot. I think I might like C a little bit more than B. Glass D, let's rinse our palate. Some molasses, peanut butter, straight butter, you know, melted butter, and like an almond, like a roasted almond, and then kind of like sprinkling it with cinnamon. A lot of good stuff in D. Wow. D is complex. D is one of those where I kind of don't want to talk about it. I just want to sit and think and talk and just chill. Or not talk, but just sit and think. Like, I want to read a book with D. I want to be by a campfire with D. I want to be hanging out with my wife with D. Like, D is like, D and A are both kind of like special moments bourbons. I can tell that already. So I think this taste-off comes between D and A. try glass E. Oh, yeah. E's pretty. E's fruity over savory. What I mean by that is we've got some nice like fried pie action, and think of a delicious fried pie, a cherry pie, an apple pie. You take a big old bite out of a big hot fried pie. It's got a lot of those notes in there, and sometimes it's that pie feeling that really kind of jumps forward. And to me, that's the note I get. And whether it's a cherry pie or an apple pie, there's not a lot of degree of separation between the pie feeling until you get to the fruit, like till you get to the actual bite into the fruit. Like you have that kind of liquidy, kind of connected with the inner dough. And listen, me being a fat boy, I love me some fried pies, especially from McDonald's. And so E's like really reminiscent to me of a lot of the great fried pies that have helped tacked on all the way to my body. I don't regret them because they sure were nice to me at the time. So what we know here after this tasting is I know that A and D are the front runners for this taste-off. And I know B, C, and E might have gotten a little bit of a bad shake. So I'm going to go back in, retaste B. Yeah, B's definitely pleasant. B's definitely nice. I don't know if it's one that I'm going to drop everything I'm doing to stand in line for. But if I see it on the shelf and it's within my wallet range, I'm buying B. But I don't know if I'm standing in line for it. C. There's just something about this earthiness, this cigar box, this funk. It's almost like, I don't think I called it a funk before. Tobacco, smoked pecan shell. I'm going to add funk here. I really dig that. I really definitely dig C. But C is not going to be one that you're going to take over A or D if you're in that kind of like high-end, hunt. I feel like C, while I really, really love it, I feel like it has a lot of the same flavors that you can get at a lower price point. And let's be honest, I know what the prices are, even though I don't necessarily know what I'm tasting here because I'm doing a blind. And I just know that C, while delicious, is hitting a lot of the same flavor profile notes of products that are less expensive. But with that said, if you are into that kind of like, that funky, that cigar box, the tobacco notes, C is an elevated version of a lot of those. So if you like that kind of earthiness, that tobacco-ness, C is your jam, and this is probably going to be the one that you would pick. But I find that most people are not like chasing those tobacco notes. What I love though is occasionally I would get an email and say like, hey, you always get tobacco in certain brands and I hunt them down and you're always right. So if that's you, if you've emailed me in the last 6 months, which there's been a lot actually, tobacco, if the C is your jam, find C if you are a tobacco lover. So we know D is in the running. Let's check out E one more time. I think E's got a taster shot against A and D. So I'm going to go ahead and put B in 5th, C in 4th. And now it's a 3-way against D, E, and A. So my comments on E is it's fruity. D, definitely complex, but molasses, peanut butter, kind of a brininess. And then A, peaches, apricot, brown sugar, brandy-esque caramel. So let's go back to A. What I'm doing now is I'm just trying to assess it on the palate, seeing where all it's hitting on the tongue. And it's mouth coating, so it's kind of like butter. It's getting on there like butter. I just realized I'm whispering. I don't know why I'm whispering, but it's just kind of getting on my palate, going all around, dripping down, and all of those notes of caramel and all those notes of fruit and everything I was talking about, I found out that they're there. They're constant. But then there is a rush of spice, a rush of beautiful, beautiful, like black pepper spice, back palate, just coming in. And that is a beautiful experience. Glass A is an experience. It is really, really beautiful. Glass D, I don't know why I was whispering there. I guess I kind of feel like this is a golf tournament. I'm narrating on myself as I'm tasting. Over here on the 9th green, he steps up and putts. Oh, the crowd is waiting. He smells. D2 is an experience. Like you can tell, this is a gorgeous, well put together bourbon. So this is more concentrated. This is more concentrated in kind of like that back, the mid and back palate area. And then there's just a touch of sweetness there toward the end. I think it really might come down to the finish of these two, because they're very, very, very close. They're close on approach, and they're close on points of the palate. So what I mean by that is the approach is like how they hit the palate, okay, and the points of the palate that they're hitting are kind of all over, but A will be more concentrated toward the back, and D will be more concentrated toward like the middle back. So they're very, very interesting, So I'm gonna give E. I feel like E is out at this stage, but it may not be. It may not be. E is vibrant. E is sexy. E has depth. E has flavor. But what it doesn't have is that wow. It doesn't have a burst of flavor. It's kind of constant. But like A and D come on that tongue, and then they're like boom, 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 and then boom. So there's like it's like a 1-2, like a 1-2 punch uppercut, with A and D. E is more of like a steady jab, more of a gonna take you to the end and get a decision, whereas A and D are knockouts. So for that reason, I'm gonna put E in third. Which, by the way, I would hunt E. E is very delicious. But I think what we have here with A and D are two exceptional, beautiful, beautiful bourbons. And I dare say they're both going to be extremely hard to find. And I would tell you that if the money matches up to what you can afford, that A and D are definitely worth standing in line for. I would stand in line for these. In fact, I'd do whatever I could to buy both of these bottles. So it's between A and D. I'm going to taste them one more time, and then I'm going to focus on the finish. Go to D. So, in that tasting, I was able to discern the styles a little bit more. A is more nuanced. It's more delicate and complex. D, while very complex, while very nuanced, it is really, I think that it's at the perfect proof, but I feel like if you added water to it, it would fall apart. So I feel like D is bottled exactly how it was meant to be, and A also was bottled how it was meant to be, but I feel like they are very variable in proof. So A being the lower proof, D being the higher proof. And I feel like D is winning a little bit just on proof alone. That said, it's so close. It is so close. I'm going to give these two one last taste. We're going to, I don't want to say they're going into like the finish round. I want to say that A is in the lead, but not by much. I mean, and if I'm comparing these to quarterbacks, you know, you got a couple Hall of Famers here in a fourth quarter drive, and you know, maybe this is the first round of the playoffs. So these are two really, really great whiskeys, worth the hunt. And now I want to set my timer. And done. That Glass A just finished for 2 minutes and 2 seconds. And to be honest with you, there's still a little bit of a residual effect there. How I define a finish is how it, the impact on the tongue. I mean, I can still technically taste it, but the basis of it is gone. Like the kind of tingling on the palate is gone. 2 minutes and 2 seconds is an extremely long finish. If you want to count like that residual, I can still taste it. That's, we could keep going down that route. But I'm talking about I can still actually feel the whiskey. Feeling the whiskey and tasting it are two different things. Like you can still, sometimes the mind can conjure up what something tastes like, and you just immediately, feel it on your tongue. That is kind of what I mean by tasting it. A lot of times when you say I can still taste it, that's your mind working. But when you can still feel it, you can still feel the vibrations, or not necessarily the vibrations, but the tingling of the whiskey on your palate. That is the finish. And for 2 minutes and 2 seconds, that ranks up there with some of the best finishes I've ever had. Now, the longest finish I've ever had, by the way, was 15 minutes. That was the Old Crow chest decanter piece from the 1960s. Yeah, best bourbon ever made if you get the right bottle. They didn't really keep that well. So let's give Glass D its due. And that's it. So we're looking at a minute and 30, a minute and 26 seconds. A minute and 26 seconds. And that is also a really long finish. So, D, to explain how D finished. D finished basically, and this is where proof can sometimes come back and bite a really complex whiskey, and I feel like that D was absolutely exceptional on the nose, on the palate. I would give that if on a 10 out of 10, at a 9, on a 10-point scale, I would give the nose and the palate probably 10, 9.8 range. I mean, we're talking uber elite on the nose and the palate. And if those are the two things that are most important for you, then I think D is your winner today. I really do. If you are a nose and palate person, I think D is your winner. I am a big fan of finish. I always have been, and so I think finish. I put a bigger importance to that when it comes to like equal palates. And we were really looking at something here that was like really close. We're looking at something that was a really close taste off. But D, it came in hot, not necessarily hot. The finish came in strong, and I think a lot of that has to do with the backbone of it, the proof of it, and then it dissipated at that minute mark. It dissipated, like it just kind of went down and it's kind of like lingered out. So going into the minute mark, it was like back palate city, just draining down on it. You can feel like that flavor all around. And then in the middle, it was tickling there as well. But then you get to like that minute and 10 marker, and it was like really gradually going down. And then the minute 20, it was like barely holding on. And so that is still an incredible finish. And I dare say it is still I would put this up there with the limited edition products. Very hunt worthy. Gotta chase this one. Absolutely, without a doubt. So I'm going to go ahead and put D in a really close second and give the edge to A. So let's find out what they are. So coming in at last was the 12-year-old Lot B. 12-year-old Lot B came in 5th place. Coming in at 4th, Michter's 10-year-old. Michter's 10-year-old. And you remember I said if you like the funk, if you like the tobacco notes, yeah, if you like the tobacco notes in C, you are going to love that one. Okay, so glass E, which is our 3rd place, is Old Rip Van Winkle. Old Rip Van Winkle, 10-year-old. So Old Rip Van Winkle, 10-year-old, comes in at 3rd. So let's see who our 2nd place winner was. So now we know it's between the Michter's 25-year-old and the Pappy Van Winkle 15-year-old. So coming in at 2nd is the Michter's 25-year-old. Again, definitely hunt-worthy, definitely delicious, but the winner of today's tasting is the Pappy Van Winkle 107 proof 15-year-old, which I will tell you, it did not taste like 107 proof on that tasting. I will definitely say that. But we do know that the Michter's 25-year-old was 116 proof, so that discrepancy between proof, I was correct on. I just did not know. I did not feel like it did not feel like 107 proof with the Pappy Van Winkle 15-year-old. To be honest with you, it felt like velvet on the palate. So, as usually is the case with me when it comes to the Pappy Van Winkle line, the 15-year-old proves to be the one that I prefer the most. You know, in 2013, I was a part of the panel that selected it the world's best bourbon at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition. And here it is today, moving on to the next round to compete for best bourbon in my best American whiskey tasting. Again, I did not acquire a 20 or 23-year-old Pappy Van Winkle, but historically, those do very poorly in my tastings. I do want to say that the Michter's 25-year-old fared extremely, extremely strong. And today, this is how it went today, but as all tastings go, especially blind tastings, it might win tomorrow. But at the end of the day, it is all about the individual palate, and I recommend that you taste for yourself. So grab a glass, grab a friend, and do a blind tasting on your own. And I hope that you're able to acquire samples such as I did here. Be safe out there, everybody. Cheers.